Welcome back. It's been 24 hours. The epoxy has cured. Here's the result. And I'll just kind of review how I got here, and then I'll talk for a minute about where we're going. There's not a whole lot to watch when doing these shank repairs. It's mostly mixing epoxy and doing little minute stuff, so I can pretty much just describe it and do the work itself off camera. There's no secret to it. You just don't want to watch somebody mixing a puddle of epoxy for 3 minutes. I mean, that kind of a thing. So anyhow, the epoxy, after about the 2-hour mark, it was starting to get to that gummy, rubbery stage. You don't want it too soft, because if pressure will shift what you've glued, but you want to be able to kind of peel this stuff off. Now, if it's a smooth pipe, use something like this, which is this is actually an imitation ivory chopstick. Works really well for little chisel shaped things for peeling off epoxy. And when you're doing rusticated or sandblast finishes, by far the best tool is a little rod, believe it or not. Gives you great control, and you just kind of spin and push, and you just shove it into the little valleys, and the junk comes out. And here's a few little flecks left. This is the actual mixing card, and these little bits here are what come off. I saved some. Here's the little puddle of epoxy. You test for doneness here. If it's stringy, don't go anywhere near your glue job. You don't go near the pipe. Once this gets to feeling like it might be pretty close, then you can test the pipe itself. But you don't want to go shifting the weights and messing with it until you've verified on your card that it's getting close. My favorite way to do that, so I don't forget to check in time, is set a regular alarm clock for about an hour and a half to start testing, and then a kitchen timer for every 15-20 minutes after that to keep coming back until it's just where I want it. I can't give you firm times on waiting for that, because every application is different. The room temperature, the quantity of glue used, all that varies from instance to instance, and you just have to play it by ear each time. Now this still needs a bit of I can use some of these 3M bristle brushes and clean up a little of that, and touch some stuff up with some stains and a Q-tip, and then wax it again. It should be fine. I can't really see the crack now, and I know what I'm looking for, and I really can't see it. So once it's fully cleaned up, it should be truly invisible. The final step on this sort of a thing, if you want a high-class, long-lasting, guaranteed bulletproof repair, I strongly recommend a metal sleeve, and we talked about it in the previous video, where this dark section here, about 80% of the depth of the airway, that's going to be lined with stainless steel. And it's not as a reinforcement for strength, rather it's to block the migration of acids and tars and moisture into the wood fibers where they contact the glue. And they could, it's theoretical, but I like to overkill in these situations, that if you were to be an extremely wet smoker and smoke this thing every day for years, it's theoretically possible that the wood could start to soften around the base of where the glue is in contact here, just from like a migration, like a surface tension migration, and then the wood itself softens and pulls free of the glue. Now the glue itself will never break down in the lifetime of a human. That's not the issue, but it's so easy to block that why not, is how, that's my take on it. Probably wouldn't matter in more than 1 out of 1,000 cases, but I like overkill. So you just find a way to measure to the depth that you want, and a handy device for that you can make yourself. It's just a piece of Delrin rod with a drill rod. You drill just the right size hole so that you get a friction fit here, and you can measure the depth of any hole just by doing that, and you're good to go. So I took the measurements, marked the drill bit. This is just a chuck off of a cheap drill that I use for handwork, and have drilled it to the proper depth. Prepped a length of stainless steel tubing. It looks kind of funny because I've sanded the surface of it for roughness. Chuck it in an electric drill and buzz it against a belt sander for just a second. Just drag it across one time and you get plenty of texture there for the glue to grab. And then make yourself a little tube insertion tool. Now remember that you're pushing this down. You want it to be flush with the bottom of the mortise, and that's hard to get it down in there. And if you'd use something like a pair of pliers or whatever and you get it cockeyed, you can't get it in. It's by far the best way to do that is take a piece of tubing that's the same diameter as the one that you're going to insert, with a rod that is a tight slip fit. Drill a hole through it and put a pin in there, wrap a piece of tape around it so the pin can't drop out. And now that rod is stuck. It won't go in farther than that. And it becomes a guide. You take your tube that you want to insert in the pipe, which is this, and you thread it over the end of this rod, and it slips on there. So you put some glue in the hole and a little on this. When it gets pushed home and you pull it back out, then the tube stays behind and this comes free. And you got lots of push power, and it basically, again, idiot proofs the whole thing. It doesn't take any real finesse. You just have to have the equipment to do this. So that is it. Let me think here if I've forgotten anything. Oh yeah, the actual glue that I went on at some length about that they make for model, or not model, but human passenger experimental aircraft is why they designed this stuff. It's called T-88, and I forgot to mention it by name brand. I highly recommend this stuff. It's by System 3 is the company that manufactures it, and I use it for wood-to-wood joins that don't require G-Flex, which is another one that I've talked about in some other videos. But this is purely wood-to-wood, and I think it's the way to go. And finally, people have asked me in the past, is it worth bothering with all this gravity and weight business for shank splices? Can't you use tape or rubber bands or clamps? And you're welcome to try those things, but I don't think you're going to have a whole lot of luck. Irregularly shaped objects are fiendishly difficult to control. They'll want to move on you and roll around and slip. And if you're trying to get a bunch of stuff axially aligned exactly so, remember this has got to fit so that you can't see a seam around there. If it was a little bit crooked in any way, shape, or form, a tiny bit off because you have more tension on one side of a rubber band than the other side, it'll harden up and you'll see a gap on one side. And you can't really fix that after it's happened. That's why I favor the slow curing epoxies as well. If you use the 5-minute stuff or whatever, you don't really have enough time to fuss with it the way I think is necessary to get a really high grade repair. Now remember, this isn't what you do with corn cobs and stuff like that, of course. This is collectible, high dollar pipes I'm talking. So if you're thinking this is overkill, remember the patient here is worth many hundreds of dollars and has a strong meaning to the person who bought it. it's worth going to this much trouble when you have a really fine pipe. It'll be arguably better than new in that it's going to be tougher. If it were dropped again in exactly the same way that caused it to break this past time, it would not break this next time. So it's arguably an improvement. Fun thought, isn't it? So that's it. Can't think of anything more. I will get this all clean. I'll glue the tube in there and get the finish cleaned up, take some static shots and post them as a fourth video. But that should do it for now. As always, thanks for tuning in and all that conventional stuff. Best of luck in your repair adventures, and I will see you guys again shortly. Got lots of projects in mind for this channel. Take care.